Welcome to tasks 8 and 9, and these two tasks have been brought together because it's a little more demanding and task 8 runs into task 9. Task 9 comes out of task 8, and it's about you performing a story, creating your own story, your own version of a traditional tale, and performing it using all the stuff we've thought about in the course. And I've called these sessions The Piper of ... because this is based on a story that many of you will know, the Pied Piper of Hamelin, which is the German story, but also you may have heard already through previous sessions on this, previous tasks on this course, The Piper of Newtown, which is the English version of the same story. But let's look at this picture here on this page, which is a picture from the Pied Piper of Hamelin, the German version. And you can see the big figure of the piper, and he gets rid of the rats. He rids the town of rats by getting them down into the river where they drown. So if you look at the river, you'll see there's a little boat with him playing his pipe. So the rats are drowned in the river. And then if you look above that, you see the mountain, and you see the piper leading the children of Hamelin into the mountains, and that's where they disappear in the mountains. So the German version has the river where the rats are drowned and the mountains where the children are taken. Now, if any of you have been to the Isle of Wight, which is where the Piper of Newtown is set, you will know that there are no mountains on the Isle of Wight. And Newtown itself used to be on the sea. It's now, the land has changed now, but it had a harbour. So the story was specific about the harbour rather than the river. Hamelin has a river. Newtown had a harbour. There is no mountain on the Isle of Wight, but there were forests. So the story in the English version uses the landscape where the story is set. In fact, it also uses the town hall, which is still there. You can still go to the town hall, and it uses Gold Street and Silver Street and the square outside the town hall. So it is using the town, and that's what we are doing in this piece of storytelling. We are going to create our own versions of the Piper of, and it could be the Piper of Nyssa, the Piper of Wrocław, the Piper of Warsaw, anywhere you like. And it needs to be specific to that place. And the last word I used on the previous slide was the word place. And that's really important when it comes to storytelling and narrative. That if we say, once upon a time there was a prince and the prince was looking for a bride, that could be anywhere. We know that they exist in human time. We know that they exist in space, but there is no mention of place. The moment we say, once upon a time there was a prince who lived in a beautiful land, suddenly space is place, because the quote here, through experience, space becomes place as we become familiar with it and ascribe value to it. Space is seen as flexible, while place is described as a pause. The movement of space halts its location and is reconfigured as place. So if that once upon a time there was a prince who was looking for a princess, it is just moving through space. We've got no anchor to a place. But the moment I say, once upon a time there was a prince in a beautiful land with high mountains and deep forests, suddenly we've stopped. We stopped here to look at it. If we do the story of Little Red Riding Hood, and she goes through the forest, and the trees created shadows that looked as if they were monsters reaching out to her, suddenly space becomes place. So what we are doing with our story of the Pied Piper, is to turn to make our story particular to a place. And I've done this a lot with children. So the children will tell the story of the Piper of Christ Church School in Surbiton. And they set their story in that place, in the school. So when they talk about the piper, and quite often it's not a piper, it's one with a mobile phone instead of a pipe, and it isn't rats, it's sometimes cockroaches from the kitchens, sometimes it's a plague of teachers, but they create their own story. And they probably don't have a river, so they don't get rid of the plague of teachers in the river. They find somewhere else. Maybe it's the building site down the road. It could be anywhere. So story makes us see place and makes us think of place as having value. And if you go to visit a historic city, so for instance, you come to London and you stop and you notice somewhere, the thing you want is the story that is attached to that place. And that pause, that story, makes the place important to you. If you want to look in detail at the structure of the Piper of Newtown, you can look at task 4 if you haven't done it already, and look at my presentation on there where I pull the story apart. There is a link on the your class notebook page for these 2 tasks. But a simpler version is to present you with this storyboard like this, and you can see the introduction that I introduce the fact that the town of Newtown is overrun with rats, as is the whole of the Isle of Wight. Then we have our initial problem that the town has no money to pay for the rats to be to lose the rats, but it promises money to the piper. And then we have the first event where the piper goes off and gets rid of the rats and he drowns them in the harbour. Then we have the second event where he comes back and he demands payment, but the councillors have no money to give him apart from, I think it's three pennies, I can't remember now. And then the final event and climax where he leads the children around the town and into the square, and then he turns and takes the children out into the forest. So the resolution is linked to the first problem. The first problem is they can't pay him. The resolution is he leaves without the money, but he leaves with the children, and the ending is the people of Newtown never see their children again. So you can use this storyboard and you can just insert your own place, whether it's going to be Nyssa or it's going to be the streets of London or a castle somewhere, whether it is going to be a piper. One of the things I haven't said is that in the story that I've told and in the Hamelin version, the German version, the piper is male. There's no reason for the piper to have to be male. There's no reason for it to be one piper. You could have a whole band of musicians. You could have, as I said, with children with a mobile phone instead of pipe. It doesn't have to be rats. Think about where your story is. What is the problem in your story? This problem has to be they can't pay to get rid of something, but what is it they need to get rid of? Hopefully you remember this diagram from our seminar together at the beginning of this course. And it is a way of thinking about story rather than thinking of things happening event 1, event 2, event 3, event 4. We think about the relationships within the story. So when you retell your story, you need to be able to demonstrate these relationships. So we got, who is it about? Who is the story about? It's about the people who want to get rid of something. In Newtown's case, it's the rats. And so that is their object. They want to get rid of it. So it's the councillors in Newtown want to get rid of the rats. Why do they want to do that? Because of the plague of rats. But why do they want to do it cheaply? And this is the key thing here. They don't have the money to pay. That is the sender. The sender is that they don't have the money to pay, but they want to get rid of the rats. Now, who's going to be the receiver of the benefit of that? Well, of course, the people of Newtown and the mayor and the councillors, of course, because they'll be more popular if they manage to get rid of the rats and do it cheaply. Now, their helper here is that they promise, and I see it's on the slide it says £50. In my version, it's £10. But the promise of money to the piper is one of them, and their ability to tell lies. Their ability to look the piper in the eye and tell him that they're going to pay him something when they're not going to do it. So that's what helps them, they think, to succeed. But of course, their opponent is the piper and the powers of the piper. And remember, the opponent and the helper are working against each other. If the helper is stronger than the opponent, the story has a happy ending for the subject. So if their ability to tell lies, their ability to just promise things and not deliver, if that works, if that's stronger than the powers of the piper, then it has a happy ending for the people of Newtown. If the powers of the piper are stronger, though, than the mayor and the councillor's lies, it pulls that way, and the story has a sad ending, which is what happens in this case. So we need to, if we look at our videos of our stories that we tell, we need to be able to look at that and go, that's why that happens. That happens because of this. And it helps us make sure that the story is coherent and we're able to make the connections across the story that we want to see. So we've thought about the structure of the story, and you have that simple storyboard with the introduction, the initial problem, the events, the climax, the resolution, and the ending. We've also seen a way of thinking about the engine inside the story that drives the story along, and that's the relationship between the subject, what they want to do, what makes them want to do it, and their helper and their opponent. But you need to think about a series of questions. You don't need to write down the answers. You just need to have these as you are thinking about your story. So first of all, you need to decide, where is it? My story was in Newtown. Newtown has a harbour and it had forests. It also had Silver Street and Gold Street and a town hall. Where is your story going to be? For your story, you will need to decide who has the problem. Is it the mayor and the councillors? Is it the teachers? Is it the lecturers in your college? Is it the members of parliament in Warsaw? I don't know who has the problem. Where are they meeting? We need to know where these people are because we're going to find them somewhere. Are we going to find them in the university? Are we going to find them in parliament? Are we going to find them in a restaurant? You need to decide where they are meeting. And what is the problem? Is it going to be rats, or is it going to be cockroaches? And when I've done this with teachers, sometimes they say politicians are the plague. And then how does the piper lead them away? How does it get rid of them? I've already suggested people have used mobile phones or different musical instruments. You can think of different ways of getting rid of the problem. And where are you going to get rid of them? Are they going to the river? Are they going to the harbour? Are they going into a wasteland? Are they going into a rocket up into space? You have to decide where they're going to go. And then how is the piper going to get revenge? Who is the piper going to lead away as punishment when the piper doesn't get paid? Is it going to be the children, or is it going to be another group? Is it going to be everyone's pet dog? I don't know. And where are they going? So you've got one place for the problem, which is in Newtown is the rats, and then you've got another place that has to make sense in your setting. And how does the story end? You've got to think about how you're pulling all of this together to make an ending. This is all information that is on the page of the notebook, the class notebook. But just I want to emphasize that when I make this recording, I don't know what the situation will be for you in your hometown at the moment, whether you can leave your home easily or whether things will change by the time you come to do this. Do not feel you have to go out into the streets if it's difficult. You can do this online. I have given you, there's the address there, so you can do Google Street View and you can walk around the streets. And on the page for the notebook, I've also given you a range of other places you could go in England. And if you have done other tasks before doing tasks 8 and 9, draw those in, use the information, use your learning from those tasks in these tasks here in your making of your story. And what example I've given you there is for task 6, show, don't tell, which is about how you describe in storytelling. And finally, this is a slide from our seminar together, and it's when we watched me telling the story of Sip at the Snail. about all of that, and we thought about what other characteristics of storytelling, what does storytelling look like. So we talked about language, the language we use. We talked about using our voices and using our bodies, the body language that we bring to storytelling. Thinking about how we use space. So in Sip at the Snail, the race was going along here, but in The Piper of Newtown, we had the steps going down into the harbour. We saw the square, we saw the streets going up and down. The use of objects. Now, I don't use any objects. I mimed objects there for the pipe in my version of the story. You can do whatever you wish. You might want to use an object, a pipe, for instance. Story structure, we've talked about. Shifts in role, so that you are the storyteller, you're the character. You're the storyteller, you're the character. And the last one, audience participation, I've put in brackets there simply because you are going to be videoing yourself. If you can video yourself with an audience, fantastic. I look forward to that. But if you can't video yourself with an audience, don't worry about that. And so that's my last slide. That's it. I hope you've enjoyed the course, and I hope that you're going to enjoy making this story. And I am looking forward to seeing them and giving you my feedback on your storytelling.